The morning of my wedding smelled like roses, hairspray, and expensive perfume. Everything looked perfect on the outside. The white flowers, the soft piano music, the guests smiling as they filled the church pews. But perfection can hide heartbreak better than anything else. I was standing behind the chapel doors, holding my bouquet so tightly my fingers hurt, when I heard my stepmother whisper something that changed me forever. "Let her walk alone. That's all she deserves." The words sliced through me before the ceremony even began. And then came the part that hurt more. My father agreed. Not loudly, not dramatically, just a quiet nod, a simple choice, one that told me everything I needed to know. The man who taught me to ride a bike, who once carried me on his shoulders at the county fair, who promised he'd always protect me, stayed seated while the wedding music started. I remember staring at the church aisle like it had suddenly become a mile long. Every guest stood, every camera turned, and I walked alone. My heels echoed against the floor louder than the piano. The silence around me felt heavy, almost unreal. I kept smiling because sometimes women learn early how to hide pain inside beautiful moments. My groom looked confused, hurt even. But no one stopped the ceremony. That's the strange thing about emotional betrayal. It rarely arrives with shouting. Sometimes it comes quietly, wrapped in politeness and family traditions. At the reception, people tried to comfort me. "At least you handled it gracefully. You looked strong. You'll laugh about this someday." But I wasn't laughing. I felt humiliated. My father gave a cheerful speech as if nothing had happened. My stepmother smiled through the entire evening like she had won something, and her daughter leaned close to me near the cake table and whispered, "Guess you finally learned your place." That sentence stayed with me longer than I expected, because deep down I realized something painful. This wasn't just about a wedding aisle. It was about years of being treated like I mattered less important, less lovable, less worthy of being chosen. That night, after the reception ended, I sat on the bathroom floor of our hotel suite, still wearing my wedding dress. My mascara had smudged. My feet ached. My husband sat quietly beside me, not trying to fix it because some wounds don't need solutions right away. They just need honesty. And for the first time in my life, I admitted something to myself. I had spent years begging for love from people who only offered approval when it was convenient. That realization changed everything. The months after the wedding were strangely quiet. My father never apologized. No phone calls. No, "How are you?" No acknowledgement of what happened. Instead, family invitations kept arriving in the mail written in my stepmother's perfect handwriting. Birthday dinners, holiday parties, family brunches. I ignored every single one, but social media still found its way to me. Photos of my father laughing with my stepsister, family dinners, matching holiday pajamas, birthday captions about our beautiful girl. It hurt more than I wanted to admit, not because I missed the events, because I realized how easy it had been for them to continue life without me. And yet, time has a way of revealing what appearances hide. About a year later, everything began to crack. My stepsister became involved in a financial scandal at work. Rumors spread quickly. Lawsuits followed. People who once praised her suddenly disappeared. And then, one evening, my phone rang. It was my father. I stared at the screen for almost a full minute before answering. His voice sounded smaller than I remembered. "Sweetheart," he said quietly, "I need help." Funny how life works. The same man who once left me standing alone suddenly wanted someone beside him. He explained that the family was struggling financially. My stepmother was overwhelmed. My stepsister's situation had damaged their reputation. They were scared. And for the first time in years, my father sounded human instead of proud. But he still didn't apologize. Not really. He spoke like the situation itself was the problem, not the years of emotional distance that created it. I listened quietly. Then I said, "I'll think about it." Not because I wanted revenge, because I wanted clarity. That conversation changed something inside me. I stopped seeing myself as the rejected daughter begging for love. I started seeing myself as someone who had survived emotional neglect and built a life anyway. And honestly, that realization felt more powerful than anger ever could. A few months later, Thanksgiving arrived. For reasons I still can't fully explain, I decided to go. Maybe I wanted closure. Maybe I wanted to prove to myself I could walk back into that house without shrinking. The moment I entered the dining room, everyone went silent. My stepmother sat stiffly beside the centerpiece candles. My stepsister barely looked up from her plate, and my father looked at me with an expression I had never seen before. Regret. Dinner dragged on awkwardly until finally my father put down his fork and said quietly, "I owe you an apology." No one moved. No one spoke. He looked exhausted. "I should have walked beside you that day," he said. "I failed you." The room felt frozen, and suddenly I realized something important. I didn't need him to say those words anymore. The younger version of me would have cried from relief. She would have clung to the apology like oxygen. But the woman sitting at that table had already learned how to survive without it. I took a slow breath and answered honestly. "You can't redo that moment," I said gently, "but I survived it." Tears filled his eyes, and surprisingly, mine stayed dry. Because healing doesn't always look emotional from the outside. Sometimes healing is simply no longer needing someone else to confirm your worth. That Thanksgiving changed our family dynamic forever. Not because everything magically became perfect. It didn't. But the truth had finally been spoken aloud. After that night, people in the family started seeing things differently. Relatives reached out privately. Cousins admitted they'd always noticed the favoritism. Even my aunt confessed she felt uncomfortable watching me walk down the aisle alone, but didn't know how to speak up. And maybe that's the saddest part about family wounds. So many people notice them. Too few say anything. Over time, my father tried harder. Not dramatically, just quietly. Phone calls, checking in, asking about my life, trying to understand the years he missed while trying to keep peace inside a complicated household. And while forgiveness didn't happen overnight, something softer eventually replaced the anger. Distance, perspective, acceptance. A few years later, I met him for coffee at a small cafe across town. He looked older, smaller somehow, like life had finally caught up with him. "I think about your wedding every day," he admitted quietly. I studied him carefully. For so long, I imagined this moment would feel victorious, like some kind of emotional justice. But honestly, it just felt sad. Sad that pride stole years from us. Sad that people sometimes realize your value only after they hurt you. Sad that some apologies arrive too late to repair what they broke. He looked down at his coffee cup and whispered, "I wish I could change it." And for the first time, I believed him. But healing isn't about rewriting the past. It's about refusing to let the past define your future. So I smiled softly and said something I never expected to mean. "You can't change that day, but I'm okay now." And I was. Because somewhere between the silence, the heartbreak, and the loneliness of that aisle, I had discovered something stronger than revenge. Myself. The girl who once felt abandoned had become a woman capable of standing on her own. Not bitter, not broken, just whole. And maybe that's the real ending nobody talks about. Sometimes the people who fail you become the reason you finally learn how to stop failing yourself. I walked down that aisle alone, but I never walked alone again.